The first time Ava Reed saved Nico Salvatore's life, she did it with one word. Not a gun, not a confession, not a miracle. One word. The courtroom was already silent when she heard it. That kind of silence did not belong in Miami. Outside the federal courthouse, the city was alive with heat, sirens, traffic, and ocean wind. But inside courtroom 7B, the air had turned cold enough to make every breath feel illegal. Ava sat in the translator's box with her headset pressed against her ears, her fingers resting over the Spanish transcript spread across the desk in front of her. She had spent 6 years inside courtrooms, translating other people's fear into perfect English. Mothers begging for sons, witnesses breaking under pressure, men pretending not to tremble. She was used to being invisible. That was what people wanted from translators. Accuracy without presence, a voice without a face, a body that existed only long enough to move one language into another. Most days, that invisibility was safe. Today, it felt like a coffin. Across the courtroom, Nico Salvatore sat at the defense table in a black suit that made every other man in the room look unfinished. He did not move. He did not fidget. He did not lower his eyes, even though the federal government had spent 3 weeks trying to turn him from a living man into a warning. He was 38 years old, feared from Brickell to Little Havana, and rumored to control half the ports in South Florida. The newspapers called him the Devil of Miami. The prosecution called him a murderer. The old women outside the courthouse crossed themselves when his black SUVs passed. Ava had never believed in devils, but Nico Salvatore made the word feel possible. He had the kind of stillness that did not come from peace. It came from control. Dark hair combed back, jaw clean-shaven, eyes like polished obsidian. He wore no visible fear, no visible desperation, no visible hope. That frightened Ava more than if he had begged. A man with nothing left to lose was dangerous. A man who refused to show what he had left was worse. On the witness stand, Rafael Ortega shifted in his seat. Sweat collected at his temples despite the cold air conditioning. He was a small-time smuggler turned star witness, the kind of man who had discovered morality only after the government offered him immunity. Marcus Vail, the federal prosecutor, stood before him with one hand tucked inside his suit pocket. Vail was handsome in a polished, political way. Silver-threaded hair, bright smile, expensive watch, the confidence of a man who had never lost anything he could not replace. "Mr. Ortega," Vail said, his voice smooth enough to poison water, "tell the jury what you heard the night of October 17th. Rafael swallowed. His testimony came through Ava's headset in Spanish. Ava listened automatically at first, translating each phrase in her mind, checking it against the official interpreter seated beside the witness stand. Then Rafael said something that made her fingers stop moving. "Yo escuché la orden venir de la otra mesa." Ava's eyes dropped to the transcript. The official translation appeared on the monitor in front of the court clerk. "I heard the order come from his table." Ava blinked. Her body went still. His table. That was not what Rafael had said. The difference was small, tiny. One word. Otra. Other. Not his. Other table. Ava looked up. The official interpreter continued as though nothing had happened. Marcus Vail did not react. Rafael stared at the jury with practiced terror. The judge watched over the courtroom like a tired god. And Nico Salvatore sat perfectly still. If the jury believed Rafael heard the murder order come from Nico's table, then Nico had given the command. If Nico had given the command, the murder was premeditated. If the murder was premeditated, the death penalty recommendation became more than possible. It became inevitable. Ava's heart began to pound. She told herself not to move. Court translators did not interrupt trials. They did not challenge official interpreters. They did not question prosecutors in capital cases. And they definitely did not correct testimony that could save a mafia boss from death row. She pressed her palm flat against the transcript, as if she could push the truth back into the paper. Maybe she had misheard. Maybe the audio crackled. Maybe her nerves had twisted the word. Then Raphael repeated it, his voice softer this time, dragged out by Vale's careful questioning. De la otra mesa. The other table, the official interpreter said again. From his table. Ava's stomach turned to ice. It was not a mistake. It was a choice. Her eyes found Nico before she could stop herself. He was looking at her, not at the judge, not at the jury, at her. Ava did not know how long he had been watching. Maybe seconds, maybe the entire trial. His gaze moved over her face with unnerving precision, as if he had felt the exact moment her fear changed shape. Ava looked away. Do not do this. Her supervisor, Gloria Price, sat 2 rows ahead and slightly to the right, stiff-backed in a navy blazer. Gloria had already told Ava that morning to keep her head down. "You are supplemental language staff," she had whispered outside the courtroom. "Not a hero, not a lawyer, not the judge. Do your assignment, collect your fee, and go home." Ava had nodded. She needed the job. She needed her rent paid. She needed her mother's medication covered. She needed no trouble. But the wrong word sat in the courtroom like a loaded gun. Marcus Vale turned toward the jury. "And to be clear, Mr. Ortega, the order came from Mr. Salvatore's table." Raphael opened his mouth. Ava stood. The sound of her chair scraping back was impossibly loud. Every head turned. Gloria's face went white. The judge's eyes sharpened. "Miss Reed?" Ava's throat closed. For one terrifying second, no sound came out. Then she heard her own voice, smaller than she wanted but steady enough to survive. "Your Honor, there has been a material mistranslation." The courtroom froze. Marcus Vale turned slowly, the smile leaving his face. "Excuse me." Ava held the transcript so tightly the paper bent between her fingers. The witness did not say the order came from his table. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Reed, you are not the official interpreter of record." "I understand, Your Honor." "Then you understand you are interrupting a capital murder trial." "Yes." "And you still believe this interruption is necessary?" Ava felt Nico's gaze on her like heat. She lifted her chin. "Yes, Your Honor. Because the word was otra, other. He said the order came from the other table. The silence that followed was not empty. It was alive. It moved through the courtroom, over the jurors, past the reporters, through the rows of men in expensive suits whose faces had gone dangerously blank. Marcus Vale laughed once. It was a small laugh, controlled, mocking. "Your Honor, this is absurd. Miss Reed is a backup translator, not a witness. This is an obvious attempt to create confusion in front of the jury." Ava looked at him. For the first time all morning, she saw something behind his polished confidence. Panic. Not much, just enough. The judge removed her glasses. "Mr. Vale, sit down." "Your Honor." "Sit down." Val sat. The judge turned to the official interpreter. "Replay the audio." A clerk pressed a button. Raphael's voice filled the courtroom. "Yo escuché la orden venir de la otra mesa." Ava did not breathe. The judge listened once, then again, then a third time. By the third replay, even the jurors understood. Other, not his. Other. The judge's expression changed. It was not dramatic. It was worse. It was the look of a woman realizing the foundation beneath her courtroom had been quietly poisoned. "Mr. Vale," she said, "approach." The attorneys stood. The sidebar swallowed their voices, but it could not hide the tension in their bodies. Nico's defense attorney looked stunned. Vale looked furious. Ava remained standing because she did not trust her knees enough to sit. Raphael Ortega stared at her from the witness stand. His fear was gone. In its place was hatred. Ava felt it like a hand around her throat. Then, from the defense table, Nico Salvatore moved for the first time. He turned his head fully toward her. Not quickly, not with gratitude, with recognition, as if Ava had stepped out of the world of invisible people and into his private line of fire. The judge called a recess. The jury was dismissed. The courtroom erupted into whispers, camera flashes, and frantic movement. Ava gathered her papers with trembling hands. Gloria grabbed her arm so hard her nails bit through Ava's sleeve. "What have you done?" Gloria hissed. Ava pulled free. "I corrected the record. You corrected a bullet into your own chest." Before Ava could answer, 2 U.S. Marshals stepped between them, not to protect her from Gloria, from the men standing in the back row. Niko's men. There were 4 of them, all dressed in black, all watching Ava like she had become a problem they needed permission to solve. Ava's pulse hammered. Then Niko rose from the defense table. The whole room seemed to shift around him. He did not look at the marshals. He did not look at the reporters. He walked straight toward Ava. His attorney tried to stop him with a hand at his elbow. Niko did not slow down. The marshals moved instinctively. "Mr. Salvatore," one warned. Niko stopped 2 feet from Ava, close enough that she could see the faint scar at the edge of his lower lip, close enough to smell cedar, smoke, and something colder beneath it. Ava held her ground, though every part of her wanted to step back. Niko looked down at her documents, then at her face. His voice was calm, too calm. "You heard it," Ava swallowed. Anyone listening honestly would have heard it. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Something more dangerous. Honest people are rare in this room. Ava should have said nothing. Instead, because fear made her stupid and truth made her reckless, she said, "So are innocent ones." One of Niko's men stiffened behind him. Niko's eyes darkened. For 1 second, Ava thought she had pushed too far. Then he leaned slightly closer, his voice lowering until only she could hear. "You should leave this building before the wrong people remember your face." Ava's breath caught. "Is that a threat?" "No." His gaze moved over her like a locked door deciding whether to open. "It's the first honest advice you've been given today." Then he walked away. No thank you. No smile. No softness. Just a warning. And somehow, Ava knew her normal life had ended before the courtroom doors even closed behind him. By 6 o'clock that evening, Ava Reed's name was on every local news channel in Miami. By 7, her apartment building had 2 unfamiliar cars parked across the street. By 9, her phone had 57 missed calls. By midnight, someone slid a photograph under her door. It was a picture of her leaving the courthouse. A red circle had been drawn around her face. Under it, in black marker, someone had written, "One word can kill." Ava stood barefoot in the hallway of her tiny apartment, staring down at the photograph as thunder rolled over Miami. Her apartment smelled like chamomile tea and old paint. Rain tapped against the kitchen window. The air conditioner rattled like it was dying slowly. Everything about her life looked exactly the same. The second-hand couch, the stack of legal dictionaries on the coffee table, the photo of her mother at the beach before the illness hollowed her face, the unpaid bill tucked under a magnet on the fridge. But the photograph on the floor had changed the room. Ava locked the door, then locked it again. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. She should call the police. She should call Gloria. She should call the courthouse security office. Instead, the phone rang before she touched it. Unknown number. Ava Froze. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She answered because terror had a strange way of making silence worse. "Hello?" For a moment, only rain spoke through the line. Then a man's voice said, "Do not stand in front of the window." Ava's blood went cold. Niko Salvatore. She turned instinctively toward the kitchen window. "Are you watching me?" "Yes." Her stomach dropped. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be comforting. Move away from the window. Ava backed into the narrow hallway. How did you get my number? You corrected a federal capital case in front of every enemy I have. Your number was not difficult. That's supposed to make me feel safer? No. Then why are you calling? Because there is a man on the roof of the building across from yours. Ava stopped breathing. The rain against the glass suddenly sounded like fingertips. Nico's voice stayed calm. Do not scream. Do not turn on another light. Do not open your door for anyone, except the woman coming up the stairs in a gray jacket. What woman? My attorney's investigator. Her name is Celia. She will take you out through the service entrance. Ava pressed her free hand against the wall to steady herself. You expect me to leave with a stranger because a mafia boss called me at midnight. I expect you to survive the next 10 minutes. A sound came from the hallway outside her apartment. A soft knock. Ava's heart slammed against her ribs. Miss Reed, a woman whispered through the door. My name is Celia Ward. Mr. Salvatore sent me. Ava did not move. Nico heard the silence. Ask her what color pen you used in court today. Ava's voice barely worked. What? Ask her. Ava stepped closer to the door. What color pen did I use in court today? The woman answered immediately. Purple. You kept tapping it against the transcript when Ortega testified. Ava closed her eyes. Nico had noticed that. Her hand shook as she unlocked the door. Celia Ward stood on the other side, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, rain on her gray jacket. She looked less like a lawyer's investigator and more like someone who had spent years learning how to leave places quickly. We need to go, Celia said. Ava looked back at her apartment. My mother's medication, already packed. Ava stared. What? Celia lifted a small pharmacy bag. Ava's fear changed temperature. This was not protection. This was control. She lifted the phone. You had someone in my apartment. Nico's voice did not soften. I had someone make sure you could leave it alive. I didn't ask for your help. You didn't ask for the photograph either. Lightning flashed behind the kitchen window. For half a second, Ava saw the roof across the street. A dark shape moved. Celia grabbed Ava's wrist. The window exploded. Ava dropped as glass sprayed across the kitchen, glittering like ice in the dark. Celia pulled her into the hallway. Ava's phone hit the floor, still connected, Nico's voice cutting through the chaos. Ava. It was the first time he said her name. Not Miss Reed. Not translator. Ava. And the way he said it made something in her chest twist. Celia dragged her down the stairwell. Behind them, doors opened. Neighbors shouted. Somewhere above, another shot cracked through the building. Ava stumbled, barefoot on concrete steps, her shoulder slamming into the railing. Celia did not slow down. They reached the service exit, just as a black SUV screeched into the alley. Two men in black stepped out with guns drawn. Ava recoiled. Celia pushed her forward. They're his. That doesn't make it better. No, Celia said. It makes it possible. The SUV door opened. Nico sat inside, not at a safe distance, not behind layers of men. There, in the alley, rain streaked down the window behind him. His black suit looked untouched by chaos, but his eyes did not. They were fixed on Ava with a cold intensity that made the storm feel quieter. Celia shoved Ava into the back seat. Ava landed beside Nico, soaked, shaking, one foot bleeding from glass she had not felt until now. The door slammed. The SUV moved before she could catch her breath. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Ava stared at the blood on her foot. Nico stared at the blood too. His jaw tightened. It's nothing, she said, though she did not know why she cared. Nico reached into the side compartment and removed a white handkerchief. Ava pulled her foot back. Don't. His eyes lifted to hers. I said don't, she repeated. The driver glanced in the mirror and quickly looked away. Nico held the handkerchief between two fingers. I am not asking because I need your permission to care whether you bleed. Avas pulsstotad. That sounds exactly like something a man says before ignoring permission. For a moment, Nico was silent. Then he lowered the handkerchief into her palm instead of touching her. The restraint unsettled her more than force would have. Ava pressed the cloth against her foot. Outside, Miami blurred into neon and rain. Police lights flashed in the distance. The city looked expensive, dangerous, and indifferent. Ava turned toward him. Why were you watching my apartment? Because Marcus Vale is not the kind of man who loses quietly. You think the prosecutor sent someone to kill me? I know he did. How? Nico looked out the window. The shooter on the roof works for the Santoro family. Ava had heard the name during trials. Santoro was not just a family. It was a ghost story in expensive suits. Old money. Old violence. Men who smiled in public and cut throats in private. What does a rival mafia family have to do with a federal prosecutor? Nico turned back to her. That is the question that got your window shot out. Ava wrapped the handkerchief tighter around her foot. I don't want to be part of your war. You became part of it when you told the truth. I did my job. No. Nico's voice lowered. You risked your life to do your job correctly. There is a difference. Something in the way he said it made Ava look away. She had expected anger from him, arrogance, threats, maybe amusement. She had not expected to be seen. That was the dangerous part. The SUV turned onto a private road lined with palms and security lights. Gates opened before they arrived. Ava looked through the rain-streaked glass at the mansion rising above Biscayne Bay. It did not look like a home. It looked like a fortress pretending to be beautiful. White stone, black iron, tall windows. The ocean behind it, restless under the storm. No, Ava said. Nico did not answer. I'm not staying here. You are tonight. I have a life. You had a sniper across from your kitchen. I can go to the police. The police will file a report and leak your location before breakfast. She turned on him, anger finally burning through fear. You don't get to decide where I sleep. Nico's gaze moved to her bleeding foot, then back to her face. No, he said softly, but I get to decide how many men die trying to reach you. The words should have terrified her. They did. But beneath the terror was something worse. Relief. Inside the mansion, everything was marble, glass, and silence. Men in dark suits moved through the corridors with weapons hidden badly enough for Ava to notice. A doctor waited in a side room. Celia disappeared to make calls. Someone brought Ava dry clothes, black leggings, and an oversized cashmere sweater that still had a tag hanging from the collar. Ava sat on the edge of a leather chair while the doctor cleaned glass from her foot. Nico stood near the window with his back to the room, speaking quietly into his phone in Italian. Ava did not understand every word. Italian was not one of her certified languages, though Spanish and Portuguese made enough bridges for meaning to cross. She caught fragments. Rooftop. Alive. Find him. No police. Then one word she did understand, because it needed no translation. Ava. The doctor finished wrapping her foot. You were lucky, he said. Ava looked at Nico's reflection in the glass. No, she said. I don't think luck had much to do with tonight. The doctor left. Nico ended the call. For the first time since the SUV, they were alone. The storm pressed against the mansion windows. Beyond them, the bay rolled black and silver under lightning. Ava stood carefully. I want to call my mother. Celia already placed a security car near her facility. Ava's stomach clenched. You found my mother? Yes. Her anger returned fast enough to make her dizzy. You had no right. Nico turned from the window. I did not touch her. I protected her. You investigated me. I investigated the woman everyone in Miami's underworld is now discussing. That doesn't make it better. No, he said. It makes it honest. Ava laughed once, sharp and humorless. Honest? From you. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. You think because I am guilty of many things, I cannot recognize one clean act when I see it. Ava's throat tightened. I didn't save you because I think you're innocent. I know. I saved the truth. I know. Then don't look at me like I gave you something. Nico stepped closer. Not enough to crowd her. Enough to make the air between them feel chosen. You gave me time. Ava looked up at him. The room seemed to narrow to the line of his shoulders, the storm behind him, and the terrible quiet of a man who had survived too much to say anything gently. Time for what? She asked. Nico's voice was nearly a whisper. To find out who wanted me dead badly enough to use a courtroom as the weapon. Ava slept behind 3 locked doors that night and still dreamed of glass breaking. In the dream, she stood in courtroom 7B again, but every seat was empty except one. Nico sat in the jury box, watching her. When she woke, dawn was leaking pale gold across the guest room ceiling. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then she saw the clothes folded on the chair, the bandage on her foot, and the armed guard visible through the balcony glass. Ava sat up slowly. The ocean glittered beyond the mansion. Beautiful. Trapped. Her phone sat on the nightstand beside a handwritten note. Your mother is safe. Call her when you wake. No signature. It did not need one. Ava called the facility. Her mother answered on the 3rd ring, voice thin but bright. Baby? You sound tired. Ava closed her eyes. I'm okay, Mom. You always say that when you're not. Ava swallowed. Her mother's illness had taken many things, but not that instinct. Not yet. I had a long day in court. I saw you on the news. Ava's heart sank. Her mother's voice softened. You stood up straight. Your father would have been proud. Ava pressed her fist against her mouth. Her father had been a public defender before a heart attack took him at 54. He used to say the law was just language wearing a suit. Change the language, change the fate. Ava had not thought of that in years. I was scared, Ava admitted. Good, her mother said. Brave people usually are. After the call, Ava found Nico downstairs in a dining room large enough to host a funeral. He sat at the end of a long table with no food in front of him, only black coffee, a laptop, and a stack of files. 2 men stood near the doors. Celia sat beside him, reading a report. Ava entered wearing the expensive sweater someone had chosen for her. It made her feel like a doll placed in the wrong house. Nico looked up immediately. His eyes moved over her face, her bandaged foot, the way she leaned slightly against the chair. You should sit. I should leave. Celia closed the file slowly. Nico leaned back. Good morning to you too, Miss Reed. The formality irritated her more than intimacy would have. I'm serious. Suawi. I cannot hide in your mansion. You are not hiding. What do you call this? Witness protection. Ava stared. You are not the government. No, Nico said. That is why mine works. Celia cleared her throat. He's not wrong. Ava turned to her. You work for him. That limits your credibility. I work for his attorney, Celia corrected, and I worked federal protection before that. Whoever sent the shooter had access to sealed court staff assignments. Your address was supposed to be confidential. The anger drained from Ava's face. Celia slid a file across the table. Inside was a copy of Ava's personnel form from the courthouse. Her home address was highlighted. Ava sat before she meant to. Nico watched her silently. Celia continued. Your information was pulled from an internal database 2 hours after court recessed. By who? Someone using Prosecutor Vale's credentials. Ava's mouth went dry. Nico's fingers rested beside his coffee cup, still and controlled. Marcus Vale has been building a case against me for 2 years, he said. He does not make clerical mistakes. So he's working with Santoro. Yes. Why? Because if I die in prison, My organization fractures. Santoro moves into the ports. Vale becomes the man who brought down Nico Salvatore. Everyone gets what they want. And me? Nico's gaze sharpened. You were supposed to stay invisible. Ava looked down at the file. That one sentence hurt more than it should have. Because it was true. The world worked best when women like her stayed useful and quiet. Translate this. Stand there. Don't take up space. Don't draw attention. Don't interrupt powerful men while they are arranging someone's death. She had broken the rule. Now, powerful men wanted to break her. What happens now? She asked. Celia answered. We prove. Vale tampered with testimony. And how do we do that? Nico slid a photograph across the table. Rafael Ortega stood outside a nightclub, shaking hands with a man Ava recognized from a dozen trial exhibits. Enzo Santoro, oldest son of the Santoro family. The witness lied because Santoro paid him, Nico said. Vale knew. We need Ortega alive long enough to admit it. Ava frowned. Why are you telling me this? Because he's spoken Spanish. His wife speaks only Spanish. His sister in Colombia speaks Spanish. The recording we have of Santoro threatening him is in Spanish. Ava went still. No, Nico said nothing. No, she repeated. I am not translating evidence for you. It would be for my attorney. You mean for you. It would keep you alive. That is manipulation. Yes. The bluntness stunned her. Nico stood, slowly, one hand in his pocket. I am not a gentleman, Ava. I will not pretend to be one because you prefer beautiful lies. I need your skill. You need my protection. That is the truth. Ava rose too, anger pushing her past fear. And what happens when you don't need me anymore? The room went silent. Even Celia looked down. Nico's face remained controlled, but his eyes changed. I do not know, he said. It was not the answer Ava expected. It was worse, because it sounded honest. The first recording arrived that afternoon. Celia played it in a secure room beneath the mansion, where the walls were lined with monitors showing exterior security feeds. Ava sat with headphones over her ears, a legal pad in front of her, and Nico standing behind her, not too close, close enough that she felt him. The recording was poor. Wind, cars, music from a distant club. Two men speaking near an alley in fast Cuban Spanish. Ava closed her eyes. Translation was not just language. It was rhythm, breath, fear. What people avoided saying, she wrote carefully. Santoro. You will say the order came from his table. Ortega. I already told them I didn't hear that. Santoro. Then hear it now. Ortega. Vale promised protection. Santoro. Vale promised what I allowed him to promise. Ava removed the headphones. Her hand was trembling. Nico saw it. Enough for court? He asked. For an investigation, Ava said. Not enough to save you. Something like amusement touched his eyes. You already did that once. Don't romanticize it. I don't romanticize survival. No, you weaponize it. He leaned one shoulder against the wall. And you translate it. Ava hated that her pulse reacted to his voice. She turned away and replayed the audio. Hours passed. Rain returned after sunset. The mansion became a world of shadows, ocean wind, and quiet violence. Men moved in and out. Phones rang and stopped. Ava translated 3 recordings, 2 voicemails, and 1 call between Ortega and a woman who sounded terrified enough to be his wife. By 10, her eyes burned. Nico brought her coffee himself. No maid. No assistant. Ava looked at the cup suspiciously. You poison all your translators, or just the difficult ones? Only the ones who stand too close to windows. She took it, despite herself. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. Nico stopped before contact. Ava noticed. So did he. The space between their hands became louder than it should have been. Ava wrapped both palms around the cup. You don't have to hover. Yes, I do. Because I'm useful? Yes. She looked at him. Nico held her gaze. And because the thought of another bullet finding you makes me want to do unreasonable things. The words entered her chest slowly, dangerously. Ava forced a laugh. Is that your version of concern? No. What is it? His eyes dropped briefly to her mouth, then returned to her eyes. A warning. Before she could answer, Celia entered. We have a problem. The monitor beside her lit up with a news broadcast. Ava saw her own face, not courthouse footage, a photo from years ago. Her at a university language conference, smiling awkwardly in a green dress. The headline beneath it read, Mafia Boss saved by court translator now missing. The anchor's voice filled the room. Sources inside the investigation suggest Ava Reed, the court translator who disrupted today's Salvatore murder trial, may have fled with the defendant's associates. Federal prosecutor Marcus Vale is calling for her immediate return and questioning whether her courtroom intervention was part of an intimidation scheme. Ava went cold. Nico's expression emptied. Celia cursed under her breath. The segment continued with a clip of Marcus Vale standing outside the courthouse. Ava Reed is either a victim or a participant, Vale told the cameras. Either way, we intend to find her. Ava stared at the screen. Her life was being rewritten in real time, not as a translator, not as a witness, as a criminal. I have to make a statement, she said. Nico turned toward her. No. If I stay silent, he controls the story. If you speak, he controls your location. He's destroying my name. He is trying to pull you into the open. And you want me to hide behind your walls while the whole country thinks I helped a mafia boss walk free? Nico stepped closer. His voice remained calm, but the room felt colder. I do not care what the country thinks. I do. The words cracked louder than she intended. Ava stood, coffee forgotten on the table. I care because I built my life out of being careful. I care because women like me don't get second chances when powerful men call us liars. I care because my mother is going to hear that. My co-workers, judges, attorneys, every person who already thought I was just a fat woman taking up space in a courtroom. Nico's jaw tightened. Ava's voice shook, but she did not stop. I saved the truth, and now he is making me look bought. For a moment, Nico said nothing. Then he looked at Celia. Arrange the statement. Celia blinked. Nico, here, tonight. No location markers. One camera. Her words. Our feed. Ava stared at him. You're agreeing? No, he said. I am adapting. The statement was recorded in a dark library with the curtains closed. Ava sat in front of shelves filled with leather-bound books that looked too expensive to read. Nico stood behind the camera, arms folded, face unreadable. Celia counted down. Ava looked into the lens. My name is Ava Reed. I am a certified court translator. Today, I corrected a material mistranslation during a capital trial because the official English interpretation did not match the witness's Spanish testimony. I was not paid. I was not threatened. I was not working for the defense. I did what my oath required. Her voice steadied as she spoke. Words matter. In court, one word can decide whether a person lives or dies. I corrected one word. If that frightens powerful people, they should ask themselves why. Celia ended the recording. The room stayed silent. Ava exhaled shakily. Nico watched her with an expression she could not translate. What? She asked. He walked toward her. Slowly. Ava told herself to move. She did not. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back. You are afraid, he said. Yes? But you do not bow. Ava's breath caught. Nico lifted his hand. For one suspended second, she thought he would touch her face. He stopped, before his fingers reached her cheek. Close enough for warmth, far enough to leave her choice intact. The restraint felt intimate enough to hurt. "I don't know whether to be afraid of you or trust you," Ava whispered. His eyes darkened. "You should do both." Celia cleared her throat from the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt whatever dangerous emotional mistake this is, but the statement is live." The video went viral within 40 minutes. By midnight, #1 word was trending. By morning, the Department of Justice announced an internal review of the Salvatore trial. By noon, Rafael Ortega disappeared. Not into witness protection. Not into federal custody. Gone. Celia discovered it first. "Ortega's safe house is empty," she said, dropping a folder onto Nico's desk. "2 marshals dead. Security cameras wiped. His wife and daughter are missing too." Ava stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself. "Well?" Nico looked at the photographs. "No. Santoro." "How do you know?" Nico tapped one image. On the wall of the safe house, written in black paint, were 3 words. The translator next. Ava's stomach turned. Nico said something in Italian to the men near the door. They left immediately. Ava looked at him. "What are you going to do?" "Find Ortega. And if Santoro already killed him, then I find Santoro." "And do what?" Nico's gaze lifted to hers. She knew the answer before he spoke. "Whatever is necessary." Ava's fear returned, but this time it had company. Something darker, something that understood why men like Nico existed in a world where men like Santoro and Vale smiled on television. She hated that understanding. She hated it more because some part of her wanted him to be ruthless. For her. That afternoon, Nico moved her to a safe house on the edge of the Everglades. Not a luxury mansion. A low concrete home hidden beyond mangroves and narrow roads, with security cameras tucked beneath the eaves and black water stretching behind it. The sky was bruised purple by the time they arrived. Ava stood on the porch watching the marshlands breathe. "This is where you hide people?" she asked. "This is where I hide things I cannot afford to lose." The words slipped out too easily. Nico seemed to realize it after he said them. Ava looked at him. He looked away first. That frightened her more than his staring. Inside, the safe house was spare but comfortable. 1 bedroom, a kitchen, a living room with hurricane shutters, weapons locked in cabinets. Ava pretended not to notice. Forced proximity settled around them like humidity. Celia came and went. 2 guards patrolled outside. But most of the time, it was Ava and Nico in rooms too quiet for denial. They worked late into the night, translating intercepted calls. Ava learned things she wished she did not know. Marcus Vale had met Enzo Santoro 6 times. The prosecution's star witness had been coached. The official interpreter had received a wire transfer through a shell company. A federal marshal had leaked Ava's assignment. The law had not failed by accident. It had been sold. At 2 a.m, Ava found Nico outside on the dock, standing under the moon with a gun in one hand and his phone in the other. She should have gone back inside. Instead, she stepped onto the damp wood. "You don't sleep," she said. "Neither do you." "I'm scared." "I know. You say that a lot. You make it easy." Ava leaned against the railing, keeping distance between them because distance felt like the only honest thing left. "Do you ever get tired of being feared?" Nico looked out over the black water. "No." The answer was immediate, cold. Then he added, quieter, "Fear is simple. And trust?" His jaw shifted. "Trust is how people learn where to cut." Ava studied him. For the first time, she saw not just the dangerous man, but the architecture of him. The walls, the locked doors, the rooms no one was allowed to enter because something inside had died there. "Who cut you?" she asked. Nico's eyes moved to hers. Ava thought he would refuse. Instead, he said, "My brother." The word was flat, but the silence after it was not. "He betrayed you." He was 16. He wanted out. Santoro promised him protection if he gave them one delivery route. What happened? They killed him. After he talked, Ava's chest tightened. Nico, do not pity me. I wasn't. You were. I was grieving for a boy who got used by monsters. For a moment, the air changed. Nico turned fully toward her. You do that, he said. What? Make things sound human. Ava's throat tightened. Maybe they are. His eyes held hers. Then his phone rang. Whatever had almost happened vanished. Nico answered. The voice on the other end was male, low, panicked, speaking Spanish. Ava heard enough to step closer. Nico looked at her. She reached for the phone. He hesitated, then handed it to her. Rafael Ortega's voice shook through the speaker. They took my wife. My daughter. Please. I did what they told me. I lied. I lied, okay? I'll say it. I'll say everything. Just don't let them kill my little girl. Ava's stomach dropped. Rafael, she said in Spanish. Where are you? A breath. A sob. Then, another voice entered the line. Smooth. Amused. Enzo Santoro. Hello, translator. Nico went still. Ava's fingers tightened around the phone. Santoro continued in English now, his accent faint and elegant. You cost many people a great deal of money. Ava felt Nico step closer behind her. She forced her voice steady. Let his family go. Santoro laughed softly. Listen to her, Nico. She saves one criminal in court and suddenly thinks she can negotiate with another. Nico took the phone from Ava. Enzo. Nico. I wondered how long before you let your little translator answer your phone. Ava flinched at the ownership in the phrase. Nico did not. You have Ortega, Nico said. I have what remains of his usefulness. If you wanted him dead, he would be dead. True. I want something else. A pause. Then Santoro said, her. Nico's face turned terrifyingly calm. Ava stopped breathing. Santoro's voice lowered. Bring me Ava Reed. I give you Ortega, his wife, the child, and the recording that proves Vale belongs to me. No. The word left Nico instantly. No negotiation. No hesitation. Santoro chuckled. You refused too fast. Nico ended the call. Ava stared at him. Nico. No. You don't even know what I was going to say. Yes, I do. They have a child, and they want you. We need Ortega alive. We will find another way. What if there isn't one? His control cracked then. Not loudly. Not fully. But enough. Nico stepped close, eyes black with something Ava had not seen before. Fear. Not for himself. For her. You do not understand what men like Enzo Santoro do to women they want to use as messages. Ava's voice softened despite herself. Then, help me understand, without deciding for me. His hand lifted again. This time his fingers touched the side of her face. Barely. Ava stopped breathing. The contact was warm, controlled, almost reverent, as if touching her was the most dangerous thing he had done all week. I have buried everyone I failed to protect, he said. I will not add you to that list. Ava should have stepped away. She did not. Outside, thunder moved over the Everglades. Inside, everything narrowed to his hand on her cheek and the unbearable truth that she was no longer only afraid of him. She was afraid of what she felt when he looked at her like losing her would ruin him. The plan they chose was not surrender. It was bait. Ava hated the word. Nico hated it more. Celia designed the operation with federal evidence rules in mind and mafia survival rules in practice. Ava would appear to agree to meet Santoro at an abandoned courthouse annex outside Miami, a building damaged by a hurricane and never restored. Nico's men would surround the area. Celia would run surveillance. Ava would wear a wire. The goal was to get Santoro admitting Vale's corruption on record, while Nico's team located Ortega and his family. You will not be alone, Nico told her. Ava adjusted the wire beneath her blouse with shaking hands. That's what men say right before women end up alone. His gaze hardened. Not this time. They stood in the safe house bedroom under yellow lamplight. Ava wore black pants, a cream blouse, and a blazer that made her look more like herself than the borrowed luxury clothes from the mansion. Nico stood by the door, watching every movement like it cost him. "You can still say no," he said. Ava looked at him in the mirror. "And let them kill a child." His silence was answer enough. Ava turned. "You told me once I should be afraid and trust you at the same time." His expression tightened. "I remember. That goes both ways." Nico stepped toward her. The room felt too small. "You are asking me to trust the world with you in it?" he said. "No. I'm asking you to trust me." For a long moment he did not answer. Then he reached into his jacket and removed a small silver pendant on a chain. Ava frowned. "What is that?" "My sister's." "You have a sister?" "Head." The word was quiet. Ava's chest softened. Nico placed the chain in her palm. She wore it for courage. Ava looked down at the pendant. A tiny silver saint, worn smooth by years of touch. "I can't take this. You can return it after." The after hung between them like a promise neither of them trusted. Ava closed her fingers around the pendant. Nico's hand covered hers. For a second, his control vanished from his eyes. "If this goes wrong," he said, "I will burn Miami to the waterline." Ava whispered, "That is not romantic." "No." His thumb brushed once over her knuckles. "It is true." The abandoned courthouse annex smelled like mold, dust, and old authority. Moonlight cut through broken windows. Rainwater dripped from the ceiling into dark puddles across the marble floor. Ava walked in alone. Every step echoed. The wire beneath her blouse felt like a second heartbeat. In her ear, Celia whispered, "We have you. Keep him talking." Nico said nothing, but Ava knew he was listening. She could feel the force of his silence. Enzo Santoro emerged from the shadows near the judge's bench. He was younger than Ava expected, early 30s, beautiful in a cruel way. Navy suit, no tie, smile like a blade hidden in silk. "Miss Reed," he said. "The woman of one word." Ava stopped 10 feet away. "Where are Ortega and his family?" "Alive. I need proof." Santoro tilted his head. A man stepped forward with a tablet. On the screen, Rafael Ortega sat tied to a chair. His wife and little girl huddled beside him, alive, terrified. Ava's heart twisted. Santoro watched her reaction with pleasure. "You see," he said, "I am reasonable. You're using a child. I am using leverage. Nico would call it strategy if he were honest." Ava forced herself to breathe. "You wanted me here." "I'm here." Santoro walked slowly down the center aisle. "You fascinate me, Ava. Do you know why? Because I ruined your plan." "No. Plans can be repaired." "You fascinate me because Nico Salvatore, a man who once watched his cousin bleed out rather than give up a port route, refused to trade you for evidence that could save his empire." Ava's throat tightened. Santoro smiled wider. "There it is. You didn't know how much power you had." "I don't have power." "Oh, but you do. Not the pretty kind. Not money. Not guns. Something worse." He stepped closer. "You make him hesitate." In Ava's ear, Celia whispered, "Keep him talking." Ava lifted her chin. "And that scares you?" "It interests me." "Where does Vale fit in?" Santoro's smile faded slightly. "Careful. You said plans can be repaired. I want to understand the plan." The plan was elegant. Vale gets his death penalty. Nico becomes a symbol in a cage. I inherit the city while the public applauds justice. And Ortega? A weak man with an expensive fear. And the interpreter? Santoro's eyes gleamed, paid well enough to hear the wrong word. Ava's pulse jumped. "There. The admission." Celia whispered, "Got it." Then static cracked in Ava's ear. The lights went out. Ava froze. Santoro's smile returned. Did you really think I didn't know about the wire? The first gunshot shattered the window behind her. Ava dropped. The annex exploded into chaos. Men shouted. Glass fell. Muzzle flashes tore through the dark. Ava crawled behind a broken bench, heart slamming so hard she could barely hear anything else. Then Nico's voice came through the darkness. Ava. Not controlled. Not cold. Terrified. She turned toward it. A man grabbed her from behind. Ava screamed as an arm locked around her throat and dragged her backward. She drove her elbow into his ribs, but he was stronger. His hand clamped over her mouth. Then he froze. A gun pressed against his temple. Nico stood behind him, eyes empty of mercy. Take your hand off her. The man released Ava instantly. Nico pulled her behind him with one arm. The movement was brutal, protective, instinctive. Ava stumbled into his chest. For one suspended second, surrounded by gunfire and broken moonlight, she felt his heartbeat against her cheek. Fast. He was afraid. Nico Salvatore was afraid. Because of her. Then he pushed her toward the side exit. Go with Celia. No. Now. Santoro appeared above them on the balcony, gun in hand. Nico. Nico turned. Santoro smiled. You always did choose the wrong people to love. He fired. Nico moved faster than Ava could understand. Pain flashed across his shoulder as the bullet tore through his jacket. Ava screamed. Nico fired back. Santoro vanished behind the railing. Celia grabbed Ava from the side corridor. We have to move. Ava fought her. He's hit. He told me to get you out. I don't care what he told you. Ava broke free and ran back. Nico was on one knee behind a pillar, blood darkening his sleeve, still firing with terrifying precision. Ava reached him. His fury turned on her instantly. I told you to go, and I told you to trust me. This is not the time. She grabbed his face with both hands. The movement shocked them both. For half a second, the gunfire seemed far away. Ava looked into his eyes. I am not something you hide and lose anyway. Something broke in his expression. Not weakness. Surrender. He pulled her down as another shot cracked overhead. Together, they moved through the side corridor, Nico shielding her with his body even as blood ran down his arm. Outside, rain fell hard over the broken courthouse steps. Black SUVs screamed into the lot. Nico's men dragged Ortega and his family from a van at the far end of the property. Alive. Ava saw the little girl crying into her mother's neck. Relief hit so hard her knees nearly buckled. Then Santoro stepped out of the shadows behind Celia, gun raised. Ava saw it first. Nico. Nico turned. Too late. Ava moved without thinking. She shoved Nico aside. The shot hit her low in the side. The world went white. Then, sound disappeared. She did not feel herself fall. She felt Nico catch her. That was all. His arms around her. His voice near her ear. Not calm anymore. Not controlled. Ava, stay with me. Rain hit her face. Nico's hand pressed against her side. His eyes were wild. Ava tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth with metal. Nico looked over his shoulder and said something in Italian that made every man around him move like death had been given instructions. Then his attention returned to her. Only her. His hand shook as he brushed wet hair from her face. Ava wanted to tell him that his hand was shaking. She wanted to say it was strange to see a monster tremble. Instead, she whispered, "Did we get it?" Nico made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. Yes. Ortega? Alive. His family? Alive. She closed her eyes. Nico's voice sharpened. No. Look at me. She forced her eyes open. His face blurred. You told me one word can decide whether a person lives or dies, he said, pressing harder against the wound. Here is mine. Ava breathed shallowly. Stay. The ambulance lights turned the rain red and blue. Nico rode with her despite the paramedics protesting. No one stopped him. At the private hospital, he stood outside the operating room covered in her blood. Not his. Hers. That was what the nurses whispered later. That the Mafia boss looked down at his hands like he had finally found something he could not threaten, buy, or kill his way out of. Eva woke 2 days later to the sound of rain. Not heavy rain. Soft rain. She opened her eyes to a white hospital room. Dim lights, machines, flowers everywhere. Too many flowers. Orchids, white roses, lilies, arrangements so expensive they looked less like gifts and more like apologies from a guilty kingdom. Her side ached, her mouth was dry. She turned her head slowly. Nico sat beside the bed, still in black, still dangerous, but changed in some quiet, irreversible way. His eyes were closed, his head tipped back against the chair, one hand resting near hers but not touching. As if even unconscious, he had stopped himself from taking what was not offered. Eva watched him for a while. The man Miami feared looked exhausted, human, wounded in places no bandage reached. "Nico," she whispered. His eyes opened immediately. No confusion, no delay. He leaned forward. "Eva." The sound of her name in his mouth hurt worse than the wound. She tried to smile. "You look terrible." His face did not change, but relief moved through his eyes so violently she almost looked away. "You were shot. I noticed. You almost died. But I didn't." His jaw tightened. "Do not make that sound small." Eva swallowed. "What happened?" Nico's gaze darkened. "Santoro is dead." She closed her eyes. She did not ask if Nico had killed him. Some questions did not need translation. "Val, arrested this morning," Ortega testified. The interpreter confessed. "The Department of Justice is pretending to be shocked." Eva exhaled. "My mother, safe. She visited yesterday. She called me rude." Eva blinked, then laughed softly, wincing at the pain. "She did?" She said, "I looked like a man who needed soup and therapy." Eva laughed again, and this time Nico's mouth almost softened. Almost. Then silence settled. Eva looked at his hand near hers. "You didn't touch me while I was asleep." "No." "Why?" His eyes met hers. "Because I have taken many things in my life. I will not take comfort from you when you cannot choose to give it." Eva's chest tightened. This was the most dangerous version of Nico. Not the man with guns. Not the man with power. The man trying to become worthy of one woman's trust without knowing how. Eva moved her fingers slowly until they touched his. Nico went still, completely still, as if the smallest contact could undo him. She laced her fingers through his. His eyes dropped to their hands. Then he bowed his head over them. For a long moment, neither spoke. When he did, his voice was rough. "I thought I could survive anything." Eva whispered, "And now?" His grip tightened carefully around hers. "Now I know there is one thing I cannot survive." Her eyes burned. "Nico." "I am not soft," he said, looking back at her. "I am not safe. I will never be the kind of man who can stand in sunlight without casting a long shadow. I know. But if you stay near me, every shadow I have will turn away from you." Eva studied him through tears she refused to let fall. "That sounds like a promise." "It is." "And a warning." His mouth almost curved. "Yes." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I'm not yours, because you protected me." Nico's expression grew serious. "No. I'm not yours because you're afraid to lose me." "No. And I'm not yours because Miami is scared of you." "No." Eva squeezed his hand. "If I stay, it's because I choose to." Nico leaned closer, stopping just before his forehead touched hers. The restraint was still there, but now it trembled. "Then choose slowly," he said. "I have waited my entire life without knowing I was waiting for you." Eva closed her eyes. His forehead touched hers at last. Not Aki's. Not yet. Something quieter. More devastating. A man built from violence, asking permission to be near peace. 3 weeks later, Ava returned to courtroom 7B. Not as a defendant. Not as a missing witness. As herself. The courtroom was packed again. Reporters, attorneys, federal officials trying to look innocent. Translators watching from the back row like Ava had become either legend or warning. Marcus Vale entered in handcuffs. His polished hair was still perfect. His eyes were not. Ava testified for 47 minutes. She explained the mistranslation, the recordings, the payment, the pressure, the photograph under her door, the bullet through her window. She did not exaggerate. She did not tremble. When the defense attorney asked why she had interrupted the original trial, Ava looked at the jury. Because silence would have made me part of the lie. In the back row, Nico Salvatore watched her. He had come, despite every legal advisor, telling him not to. No entourage inside. No visible weapons. Just Nico in a black suit, seated where the public could see him, his injured shoulder still stiff beneath the fabric. He did not smile, but when Ava stepped down from the witness stand, his eyes followed her with something the entire courtroom could feel. Not ownership, not gratitude, devotion held on a leash. Outside the courthouse, rain fell over Miami in silver sheets. Ava stood beneath the stone columns while cameras flashed and reporters shouted her name. She was no longer invisible. That still scared her. Maybe it always would. Then the crowd parted. A black umbrella appeared over her head. Nico stood beside her, close, but not touching. "Your car is waiting," he said. Ava looked at the line of black SUVs along the curb. Subtle. "I'm learning moderation." "No, you're not." "No," he admitted, "but I am learning you." Ava smiled before she could stop herself. The cameras caught it. The next morning, every headline showed the same photograph. Ava Reed beneath Nico Salvatore's umbrella. The translator and the Mafia boss. One word had saved his life. One bullet had changed hers. One choice still waited between them. That evening, Ava found Nico on the balcony of his Biscayne Bay mansion, watching storm clouds gather over the water. She had not moved in. Not officially. But her books were in the library. Her mother's favorite tea was in the kitchen. And Nico's men had learned that Ava hated being followed too closely, but secretly appreciated when someone made sure her car tires were checked before court. It was not normal. Nothing about them would ever be normal. But it was becoming something. Ava stepped beside him. "I got offered a position," she said. Nico looked at her. "Where?" "Federal Language Integrity Review Board." That sounds like a room full of people who pretend words are not dangerous. "They want me to build safeguards for court translation." His eyes softened in that almost invisible way she had learned to recognize. "You should take it. You don't mind?" "I mind many things, Nico." He turned toward her. "I mind that rooms will know your value before you enter them. I mind that men will look at you and realize courage has your face. I mind that your name will be spoken in places I cannot control." His voice lowered. "But I will never make your world smaller because mine is dangerous." Ava stared at him. There it was. The thing he had been learning to give her. Not diamonds, not cars, not armed men. Space, choice, respect. The wind lifted her hair. Nico reached for her, then stopped. Still asking. Always now asking. Ava stepped into him. His arms closed around her carefully, as if she were both woman and miracle. His face lowered into her hair. For the first time since she had met him, he let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "I was afraid of you," she whispered against his chest. "I know. I still am sometimes. I know. But not because I think you'll hurt me." His hand moved slowly over her back. "Then why?" Ava lifted her face. "Because when you look at me, I feel like the world could burn, and you'd only ask if I was cold." Nico's eyes darkened with that dangerous devotion she had once feared, and now understood too well. "I would ask," he said. "Then I would burn it warmer." Ava should have told him that was too much, too intense, too dangerous. Instead, she rose onto her toes and kissed him. Nico went still for half a heartbeat. Then, his control broke quietly. He kissed her like a man who had survived death, power, betrayal, and loneliness, only to discover that the most dangerous thing in the world was gentleness freely given. There was nothing soft about the way he held her, but there was reverence. There was restraint. There was the tremor of a man who could command armies and still fear the moment a woman might step away. When Ava pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "You saved me with one word," he whispered. Ava smiled, her hand against his chest, feeling the heart Miami swore he did not have. "No," she said. "I corrected one." His mouth curved faintly. "And what word would you use now?" Ava looked past him at the storm over the bay, at the city beyond it, at the dangerous life waiting for them both. Then she looked back at the man who had once warned her to fear him, and had somehow become the only shadow she trusted. "Stay," she said. Nico closed his eyes. The word moved through him like absolution. Outside, thunder rolled over Miami. Inside the mansion, the feared Mafia boss held the woman who had dragged him back from death, with nothing but courage, language, and a voice that refused to disappear. And for the first time in his life, Nico Salvatore did not feel powerful because people feared him. He felt powerful because Ava Reed had seen every dark thing he was, and still chosen to stay.